A mí me gusta andar de pelo suelto, me gusta todo lo que sea misterio, me gusta ir siempre en contra del viento. Si dicen blanco yo les digo negro. A mí me gusta andar de pelo suelto, aunque me vean siempre con enredos. Me gusta todo lo que sea sincero. Yo soy real y no tengo reverso. A mí me gusta andar de pelo suelto, aunque me digan que hasta barro el suelo. Ser agresiva como gato en celo y a veces mansa como león con sueño. A mí me gusta andar de greña suelta, aunque se acabe de infartar mi abuela. A mí me gusta andar de pelo suelto, aunque me pongan gritos en el cielo. Y voy, y voy, y voy, y voy, y voy. Voy a traer el pelo suelto. Voy a ser siempre como quiero. Voy a olvidarme de complejos. A nadie voy a tener miedo. Voy a traer el pelo suelto. Voy a ser siempre como quiero. Aunque me tachen de inocente, aunque hable mal de mí la gente. A mí me gusta andar de pelo suelto. Yo no soporto a los hombres serios. Si alguien quiere que me corte el pelo, aunque lo ame, se va mucho al cuerno. A mí me gusta andar de pelo suelto. A los cepillos ya ni puedo verlos. Me gusta serle fiel a un sentimiento. Voy a olvidarme de los tristes tiempos. Y voy, y voy, y voy, y voy, y voy, y voy. Voy a traer el pelo suelto. Voy a ser siempre como quiero. Voy a olvidarme de complejos. Muchos años uno cree que el caer es levantarse y de repente ya no te paras, que el amor es temporal, que todo te puede pasar y de repente estás muy solo. Afuera tú no existes, solo adentro. Afuera no te cuido, solo adentro. Te desbarata el viento sin dudarlo. Nadie es nada, solo adentro. Siguen los años y uno está creyendo que puede rezar y de repente ya te perdiste. Y uno cree que puede creer y tener todo el poder y de repente no tienes nada. Afuera tú no existes, solo adentro. Afuera no te cuido, solo adentro. Te desbarata el viento sin dudarlo. Nadie es nada, solo adentro. Afuera tú no existes, solo adentro. Afuera no te cuido, solo adentro. Te desbarata el viento sin dudarlo. Nadie es nada, solo adentro.
Good evening. and welcome to the Harris Theater for Music and Dance. Before the performance begins, please take a moment to locate the emergency exit nearest you. We ask that you silence your phones and stow away any distractions to give your full attention to the performance and to ensure that you and your fellow audience members may enjoy the performance uninterrupted. Please note that recording and photography are prohibited. The Harris Theater for Music and Dance resides on the traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. Many other tribes, such as the Miami, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Sac, and Fox, have also called this area home. The region has long been a center for indigenous people to gather, trade, and maintain kinship ties. Today, one of the largest urban American Indian communities in the United States resides in Chicago, and members of this community continue to contribute to the life and culture of this city. Thank you for joining us tonight at the Harris, Chicago's home for music and dance.
Como quisiera poder vivir sin aire, como quisiera poder vivir sin agua. Me encantaría quererte un poco menos. Como quisiera poder vivir sin ti. Pero no puedo, siento que muero, me estoy ahogando sin tu amor. Como quisiera poder vivir sin aire.
Yo soy mexicano,
Chicana, pocha,
Latino,
yo soy de aquí,
y de allá,
the 200%ers,
de Durango,
de Michoacán,
Guerrero y Jalisco,
yo soy de Chicago, de La Villita,
Pilsen,
Cicero.
and back of the yards.
Yo soy the first of my family.
yo soy the first in my field.
Yo soy the first.
pero no seré la última.
Yo voy a cambiar el mundo
I am going to innovate.
Create,
and change the world.
Yo soy
Soy
yo.
yo.
¿Y tú quién eres?
For Zonas de Mexico. Yeah. Woo. Man, I said that a lot more hype than I meant to, but that's thanks to you all. Hi, everybody. Hello. Welcome to Latinos Progresando's 11th annual MEX Talks. My name is Jorge Silva. I was actually a part of the 2018 MEX Talks lineup, and I'm a proud, let me scratch that, super proud member of the MEX Talks familia. Thank you. Yeah, we can applaud that. Latinos Progresando has truly created something unique in MEX Talks. This amazing space where we could come together as Mexicanos to share in our culture, our identity, and our stories. I'm so proud to be back here on the MEX Talk stage for this very, very special program in a brand new location. Let's give it up for the Harris Theater. Yeah. Tonight's event program is available digitally. Scan the QR code, point to screen to learn more about the speakers and sponsors making tonight possible. On behalf of the MEX Talks familia, I want to thank all of you for being here. And thank you to everyone out there tuning into the live stream on Latinos Progresando's YouTube channel. Here in the audience and at home, you can access Spanish language subtitles using this QR code. A special thank you to MEX Talks title sponsor Target, as well as our presenting sponsors Bimbo Bakeries USA and Constellation Brands. And a thanks to all of tonight's sponsors. Be a part of the conversation on social media using hashtag MEXTalks. And make sure to follow us on follow Latinos Progresando on @LatinosPro on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn to stay up to date with this amazing work they do for the community. They have done this really great weekly segment called MEX Talks Mondays, where they highlight positive stories featuring Mexicans. All of tonight's talks will be posted on Latinos Progresando's YouTube channel. In fact, you could find videos of every MEX Talk since 2013 on YouTube, including mine. This evening, we have the unique privilege of hearing from 5 distinct voices, representing the broad range of experiences and ideas, each one a proclamation of yo soy, I am, owning everything that makes us Mexicanos. Each of our speakers will share their story, stories that reflect the many complexities of Mexican identity, our indigenous roots, our evolving culture, our histories, our victories, and the spaces we occupy and everything in between. I now have the pleasure of welcoming back to the stage Sones de Mexico co-founder Juan Diaz. Juan is a force in the preservation and promotion of Mexican folk music and culture. With Sones de Mexico Ensemble, he has recorded 6 albums, performed in over 2,000 concerts, and earned 2 Grammy nominations. Everyone, Juan Diaz.
Bienvenidas, bienvenidos, bienvenides. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. Good evening to all of you. Allow me to kick off this discourse with a profound reflection on the phrase that brings us together today. Yo soy, I am. This simple phrase has puzzled philosophers and theologians and, well, even people who love tacos al pastor. Yo soy, 2 seemingly innocent words that invite us on an existential journey with questions and possibilities. No, I'm not talking about a new science fiction movie, although it could be a perfect title for one. I'm talking about those 2 words we casually throw around in our everyday conversations without hesitation. And then we gaze off into space as if we were searching for answers among the stars. Yo soy. ¿Soy yo? ¿Quién soy? But what does yo soy really mean? Some might say it's a declaration of identity, a reminder to ourselves that yes, we exist, we belong, and we matter. And for that matter, please pass me along that double serving of those tacos al pastor. Ultimately, yo soy is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get. It's a phrase that is usually followed by something else. Yo soy músico. Yo soy un romántico perdido. Yo soy mexicano. Yo soy americano. It can be deep introspective, or just a way to assert your presence in a group conversation. Yo soy de San Luis Potosí. Did you enjoy the music of Sones de Mexico? Thank you. Did the music you heard sound Afro-Mexican to you? As Mexicans, do you think of yourself as part Black? Now let's take this exploration of yo soy and connect it to the theme of that apparent dual identity that often seems to be expected from us Mexican Americans. Whether we're talking about a Mexican immigrant in the United States grappling with the dilemma of assimilating to a new environment, or B, the children of immigrants born in the United States who have grown up in a culturally Mexican household while navigating a dominant English-speaking mainstream culture that often reduces Mexican culture to stereotypes. This theme of balancing two worlds is both intriguing and complex. Picture Juan, that could be me, an immigrant from Mexico living in the United States. On the one hand, he feels pressure to assimilate and adapt to the dominant culture. At work, he tries to speak fluent English. He puts up with being called John because some find Juan too difficult to pronounce. He tries to catch up on the latest TV show everyone seems to be watching so he can be part of the conversations during lunch. He say, oh yeah, that 90s show, how about that? But at home, Yo Soy transforms Juan back into the Spanish-speaking, tradition-embracing Uber Mexican who makes the best tacos al pastor. He listens to rancheras. He parades a Mexican flag on the hood of his car for the entire month of September. It's like he's got a personality switch that changes between work and home. Then we have Maria, born in the United States, but raised in a Mexican-American household. She listens to trap music on her headphones, and when the headphones come off, she listens to rancheras and corridos tumbados at family gatherings. But she can't always sing along because the only Spanish she learned at home was, haz tu tarea, vete a dormir, acábate la cena. She took Spanish in high school and got a B. She doesn't understand anything her grandparents say. She just knows they love her. And that doesn't require a language. Her parents, with the best of intentions, thought that speaking Spanish would prevent her from succeeding in this country. Once, her parents brought her along to the bank to negotiate their 30-year fixed mortgage. She was 12 years old. When she's at school or work, her Mexican culture seems to take a backseat to the dominant culture. It is as if she's having to constantly flip that cultural switch between family and school, depending on where she is. But fear not, my friends, you are not alone in this balancing act. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where your mind is automatically switching language depending on who's around? Or perhaps you felt the pressure to downplay certain traditions to fit better in an unfamiliar environment. For instance, imagine Maria at school attempting to explain to her American friends Dia de los Muertos. Dia de los Muertos is not Halloween. It's not Dracula and Frankenstein. It's abuelito and abuelita. But here's the key, my friends. There is no need for a dilemma. We don't have to choose between being Mexican or American. We can embrace both identities and be whole beings. Just like Yo Soy, with all its complexities, we are an amalgamation of experiences and cultures. And that's what makes us unique and valuable. By reclaiming our Mexican-American identities, we can be advocates of our own history. And Mexico has a 4,000-year history, which is a birthright to anyone of Mexican descent. Own it. We should not hide our culture from the mainstream. Eat those tacos al pastor with pride. I want to tell you a quick story about how I became a Mexican folk musician, and how I came to choose to play a style of rural music from the most remote areas of the Mexico's countryside. The kind that you probably would never hear on the radio, the kind that even most people in Mexico have never heard of. Mexican son. I was 18 years old when I arrived in the United States. Mexican music was the last thing on my mind. I wanted to play rock, jazz, blues, reggae, and even bluegrass. It took me 8 years before I returned to Mexican music. It happened at a fateful wine and cheese reception at Indiana University, where I was pursuing a graduate degree in ethnomusicology. I was specializing in African music, of all things. A scholarly woman approached me and asked me, I notice you have an accent. Where are you from? And I said, I'm from Mexico. And she said, oh, that's wonderful. You know, I have a cousin in Santa Fe. I thought to myself, Santa Fe? That's New Mexico. Is it possible that this woman doesn't know that there's a country that shares a 2,000-mile border south of the United States and it's called Mexico? And then she asked, what do you do? And I said, I'm a musician. And she said, oh, that's wonderful. Ole, cha-cha-cha. And I thought, ole? That's what people shout in flamenco in Spain. And cha-cha-cha is from Cuba. Was it possible that this educated woman could not tell the difference between Mexico, Spain, and Cuba? Unfortunately, this is not rare. But somehow I had not noticed it until now. For the first time, it dawned on me that it is people like her that one day will be writing policy that will affect people like me. And I don't seem to be in the picture. I thought, why doesn't the Mexican government, a country with such cultural wealth, send special emissaries around the world to promote a better understanding of Mexican culture? It would be in the best interest to be taken seriously, wouldn't it? And then I thought, wait a minute, who better suited than me? I'm a musician, I speak both languages, I'm articulate, I straddle both worlds. That was my calling. Fast forward 30 years later, here's Sones de Mexico Ensemble playing and explaining Mexican folk music in Carnegie Hall, Symphony Center, at your local elementary school assembly, and at the Opera House in Beijing, China. With 2 Grammy nominations, and most recently, a Mexican music school in Chicago that teaches music en español. By the way, we start classes next week. I don't think me or this band could have developed in this way had we stayed in Mexico. We founded it here to serve a specific need in the US because we have been pushed to carve room for our culture in American society. There is no doubt about it. What we do is a political act. We need to challenge ourselves and challenge stereotypes to defend our culture, but also to educate others about our traditions and our contributions to society. No one said that it would be easy to be bicultural. When we're criticized for losing our language or our culture, let's remember that being bicultural, by being bicultural, we also gain a broader perspective and the opportunity to bring innovation into hybrid cultural spaces. We become agents of change, creativity, and innovation. The same can be said about our contributions when going back to Mexico. When I go back to Mexico, I see things a little differently from how my paisanos see them. I saw racism, sexism, homophobia in the 1980s. I saw this in a way that I didn't used to see when I lived down there. When I called it out, they called me crazy. Aquí no somos eso. Now Mexico, 35 years later, is finally coming to terms with this. In my view, it's better late than never. So, in conclusion, my friends, let's set aside the dilemma and embrace our Mexican-American identity with pride and passion. Yo soy is more than words. It's a powerful assertion of who we are and who we can become. Let's celebrate our roots, debunk myths, and build a cultural bridge between two worlds to enrich our lives and society as a whole. And let's have some tacos al pastor. Thank you, and long live Mexican American culture. Gracias.
Thank you so much. Now, I was really excited to meet our next speaker. His voice might be familiar to you. Felix Contreras has been a journalist for over 45 years and has been with NPR since 2001. He's the co-creator and host of Alt Latino, NPR's pioneering radio show and podcast celebrating Latin music and culture since 2010. Unfortunately, Felix is unable to be here with us tonight, but he has prepared a short video to share. So let's hear from Felix.
Hey there, my name is Felix Contreras, and I am a journalist. I've worked at NPR for 21 years now, and I've been the co-host of the Alt Latino podcast for the last 13, and I have been booking the Latin music for the Tiny Desk concerts, which is where I'm sitting, for the last 10 years. And I'm so sorry I could not be there today. Because Hispanic Heritage Month, or Latina Heritage Month, or Latinx Heritage Month is our busiest time of the year for our Tiny Desk concerts, and we call them El Tiny. And this year has been crazier than normal, so my deepest apologies for not being there. Okay, identity. That's a deep subject. In fact, my reference to both Latino and Hispanic and Latinx speaks to the issue at hand. And so I'm going to solve once and for all just what it is we should call ourselves. Yeah, right. It's never going to happen. Obviously, things like a collective identity are important and can fluctuate, as we've seen over the decades. But rather than chat about a collective identity, I want to share a story about my own experience dealing with what to call myself, or how more accurately, how I see myself. Because I recently learned that how we see ourselves can change throughout our entire lives. And let me explain that with a story. First and foremost, I am of Mexican American background. I'm in my 60s and I was born here in the US. My mom and dad were born here in the US during the 1920s and 30s. My grandparents on my dad's side were from Guanajuato in Mexico, and my mom's people were in New Mexico and were part of that demographic in which the border moved on them in 1848. I am second generation and was raised before it came a point of cultural pride to speak Spanish and claim your culture. In fact, my mom didn't want my dad to teach us Spanish because she and him had been punished for speaking Spanish and when they were kids, and she saw English as the only route to success in this world. And that is a very common experience among my generation, the boomers. As my sons constantly point out, I'm a boomer and not in a positive way. I grew up in Sacramento, California with both of my parents and three younger brothers. And between the time I started kindergarten in 1964 and went on to junior high school, I attended an elementary school that was probably 90% African American in an inner city neighborhood in North Sacramento called Del Paso Heights. I have my dad to thank for making sure we knew our Mexican heritage. I remember very distinctly coming home from school one day, and as usual, he asked me what I learned in school. And when I told him Hernan Cortez conquered Mexico, he said, "Have a seat, man, we got to talk." My dad was born in 1929. In fact, he just celebrated his 94th birthday last month. He's still in Sacramento, still very much mentally active. In fact, all I got to do is mention Trump and he gets all pissed off and starts talking about politics. So he's still very much with us. He grew up as a migrant farm worker, 9 siblings, mom and dad from Mexico, traveling across the US working the fields. My dad was born in Kansas, and I have uncles and aunts born in Colorado, California, a whole bunch of places. And they settled in Sacramento when they could no longer travel after my dad's dad died at an early age. He told me his dad was going to be a priest back in Mexico and eventually decided not to take his vows. So here was this farm worker who was the product of a Jesuit seminary education. He read all the classics in Spanish. He could speak Latin. He was great at math, was good at sciences, in short, a very learned man. My dad says that he taught him about Mexican history when he was a kid, working side by side with his dad in the fields when he was a kid. So when I came home with that propaganda about Cortez in Mexico, He set out to educate my brothers and I about the real history. So I was developing a sense of a Mexican identity, even as I grew up in the 1960s in a neighborhood that was almost all African American. And since music is now how I interpret the world around us these days, let me put it this way. When we would wake up every morning to go to school, I would change the radio station on that radio in the kitchen that we all have, would change it from my parents' Mexican music to the top 40 stations, playing Aretha Franklin, the Jackson 5, Sly and the Family Stone. And looking back, I can see I was developing a tricultural existence, eating Mexican food, hearing music in Spanish at family parties, because my mom loved mariachi, and I was doing the funky chicken at school dances. And I'm looking into the camera because I see some confusion out there. Funky chicken was a popular dance back in the 70s. If I was there, I would demonstrate it, but I'm not there, so you don't have to sit through that. I say tricultural because through TV and movies, we were exposed to mainstream culture or white culture. TV shows that featured all white people and white people problems and humor. Movies that featured mostly white people. In fact, that was my main point of contact with mainstream culture, was through the media. At this point, and that is the point I want to make today, I didn't grow up in an environment in which my sense of identity and the value placed on that identity was dictated by people who placed a negative value on it. In other words, during those very crucial formative years between kindergarten and middle school, I didn't grow up with people putting me down because of my ethnicity. In fact, a lot of my friends seemed to gravitate toward our house around the time my mom was making flour tortillas in the evening, usually coming around saying, "Hey, Mrs. Contreras, can I get one of those tortillas and butter?" They were very popular in my neighborhood. But by doing that, they placed high value on what I took for granted every day. And that was crucial to my understanding of my place in this world. And here's the point I want to make today. I didn't see that. I didn't understand that. I didn't even realize that was my experience until just a few weeks ago. On our Latino podcast, we're working on a series of episodes to try to explain and understand the recent explosion of Mexican regional music, Peso Pluma, all those guys, right? As part of that process, our very talented series producer, Janice Shamoka, asked my co-host, Ana Maria Sayer, and I some questions about our experiences with our identities. And as I told the story I just heard about how I grew up, as I told the story you just heard about how I grew up, I heard it in a different way. I stood out as different to my little African-American pals, different, not lesser than. And it was suddenly clear to me why I have always spoken up and challenged people who try to put me down, probably even played a role in why I wanted to become a journalist, to tell our stories. And I never realized it until a few weeks ago. So the point of all this, yesterday was my birthday. I turned 65 years old. And I'm blown away that I learned something about myself, even at this age, that will help me understand who I am, how I see myself, and how the world sees me. So this thing about identity is a never-ending process. Identity, man. It's deep. Thank you. And thanks for having me, man.
I told Felix that the next time I saw him, I would obligate him to demonstrate the funky chicken. Our next speaker has a lot to say about finding and building community. A born and raised Chicagoan, Reina Ortiz is a proud trans two-spirit woman who fights for the rights of the trans and gender nonconforming community. Reina currently works through Task Force Chicago. Everyone, let's welcome to the stage, Reina Ortiz.
Gracias. Daslokamati, Hue Yokoyani, Impa Nemo Huani. Thank you, Grand Creator, Giver of Life. Gracias Dios, Creador, Dado de Vida. Tonight we acknowledge the indigenous tribes that lived upon these lands prior to the genocide that we've experienced by the hands of European colonizers. Chicago, Chicago is the traditional homeland of the Council of the Three Fires. Ottawa are the keepers of the trade. Ojibwe are the keepers of the writing. Potawatomi are the keepers of the fire. And tonight, we honor their names. As a 43-year-old Taína Mexica Two-Spirit Indigenous woman who is proud to celebrate this year as her 30th anniversary of Reina Ortiz, trans power. Thank you. Thank you to my mother, Chicana Mexica, and my father, Taíno Boricua, and all my family who had bypassed deeply Eurocentric religious ideologies to just simply love me. It was 1993. I was 13 years old. Yes, believe it. When I told my mother that I wasn't just a boy and I wasn't just a girl, but I was something beautifully in between. The words that my mother told me linger still in my mind. You are my child. I love you. We all love you. But when you walk out these doors, they are not going to understand you. They are not going to understand you. At the time, I really didn't understand who were they? Who are they that my mother warned me about? Mexicanos, Hispanics, Latinos, indigenous, Mexican Americans, Chicanos, Native Americans, immigrants, South Americans. I had to learn at a very young age that they all look like me. They ate like me. They lived like me. They was my own culture, my own community, my own people that my mother was warning me about. How did we get here? The hatred of our own or anyone for that matter. We as a culture had sacrificed, mutilated, and tortured our own kind for centuries. No different from the Aztec, MEX, Mayans, Toltecs, only focusing on minute differences and never the bigger picture. Until that evil and divisiveness had partially wiped our culture off the face of this earth. Montezuma, you have failed your people. We as a culture have assimilated for survival. You know, I speak Spanish. Cara de no pa. The worst. No sabes culture. You know that speaking Spanish is a ramification of brutality and forced assimilation. You know that, right? You know that? Do you know that? I know. Pobrecitos. It hurts to hear that. Do we still not sacrifice our own and call each other wetbacks, beaners, undocumented immigrants, pinche indio? Or worse, how about faggot, puto, maricón, joto? Next time, how about trying these? Mushe, Caxton, Agakwe, Imahana, Bote, Winte, Ai, Kokowa, Nedley, just to name a few. We went from shamans to sex workers, from mystical beings to statistical nightmares. As a society, we're so quick to forget that gender variant expressive from the tip of Alaska Inuit Sipwa down to the machi of Chile. We have walked with this culture that appreciated the beautiful complexities of gender realities of humanity for thousands and thousands of years. We fought wars, healed our wounded, raised the lost children, and still do, by the way. Held the hands of our elderly as they moved on to the next life. There are so many things that we lost. Parts of our culture are so deeply buried, we have absorbed the bad habits of our conquerors. How do we heal as a collective? 500 years of generational and genocidal traumas. If we are unwilling to acknowledge the wounds of our past, it hurts. It's brutal to hear, but I want you to know that this war is not over. We all have a choice. Do we continue the easy path of assimilation and let the beauty of our culture fade into the abyss of the could have been? Or do we battle? I always choose the battle, by the way. And chip away from the very culture that continues to minimize and otherize the true inhabitants of this land. I choose to fight. You ask, how do I fight? How do I fight? How do I fight? How do I fight? I became a social worker. Specializing in working with transgender, gender nonconforming, gender variant, two-spirited, beautiful human beings that are gender variant on the west side of Chicago, Task Force Prevention on Madison and Cicero. Okay, the Vogue School, check it out Monday and Wednesday. I chose to unearth, reclaim, and educate. Speak of a time when we were included in our own culture and not made to feel like an oddity or an outsider. I patiently teach my youth until the words seep into the next generation who will break the 500-year-old curse that was brought upon our people. Be proud of all that you are. Love your family, love your mama, love yourself, and most importantly, love your culture. Deslocamati. Thank you. Gracias. Viva Mexica! Viva Mexica! Gracias a Dios. Yeah, gracias. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One more time for Reina Ortiz. Whew. I have to say thank you again because that's an incredibly generous story. And we are so grateful to people like Reina who are committed to uplifting and serving. As a community-based organization celebrating 25 years of service this year, Latinos Progresando understands this commitment. Since Luis Gutierrez opened Latinos Progresando's first office on 18th Street with just $200 in the bank, the organization has grown to serve thousands of families from over 60 countries around the world. Today, with the support, yeah, we can celebrate that. Absolutely. Like somebody just yelled, Luis, yeah. Today, with the support of so many people in this room and beyond it, Luis has built a truly incredible organization. And actually, let's give Luis another round of applause for a 25-year milestone. Beyond its flagship immigration legal service program, Latinos Progresando has brought legal services to undocumented victims of domestic violence and has provided tens of thousands of dollars in scholarships to promising young leaders. Even more, Latinos Progresando is leading coalition building efforts on Chicago's southwest side of the city through hyper-local collaboratives like the Marshall Square Resource Network and cross-community collaboratives like One Lawndale and the Accelerator Fund, which builds bridges between Chicago's Black and Mexican communities. But don't just take my word for it.
When I think about LP, I think about the words visionary, inclusive, and responsive.
LP means community, hard work, fun people.
They have conviction, courage, passion, compassion, and are laser focused on their mission ahead.
Latinos Progresando is more than an organization. It is a pillar of the community and a support system that has helped shape the lives of individuals like me.
Apoyo a Latinos Progresando porque entiendo las necesidades de nuestra comunidad. ¿Por qué las entiendo? Porque soy migrante, porque soy parte de ella, porque vivo en ella.
I personally support Latinos Progresando because I'm a DACA recipient.
I've been with Latinos Progresando for 10 years, and it means that we're here to help and provide all the need that the community needs, and they know that this is an organization that they can trust.
Es importante que apoyemos la organización de Latinos Progresando porque trae muchos programas y actividades para la comunidad. Están muy comprometidos con el bienestar de toda la familia.
It's about love for your people, and I love the fact that LP is focused on building up the Mexican community.
Another great opportunity that Latinos Progresando provides, not just for Lincoln Park Zoo, but for all partners working in South Lawndale, is convening the Marshall Square Resource Network.
I've appreciated the way Latinos Progresando builds community and then also builds partnership across other organizations, and ultimately is just a tremendous partner for us at the city.
LP also realizes the value and how important it is for cross-cultural connections and communities. And so LP is by far one of my favorite community-based organization partners.
Llegué a Latinos Progresando siendo parte del grupo comunitario, después cliente de Latinos Progresando y por último trabajando para Latinos Progresando. Me dio la oportunidad de crecer como persona.
Overall, they really do care about the human being, and I would recommend it to anybody, even if they just need someone to talk to.
Their impact is felt in the community, and it has also shaped my education and my aspirations.
I encourage any company and any individual that wants to make a difference and for generations to come to join and support the work of Latinos Progresando.
Latinos Progresando siempre está ahí. Latinos Progresando siempre dice, sí se puede. Estoy muy orgullosa de ser parte de esta organización.
And here we are today at the 11th annual MEX Talks. And Latinos Progresando has responded to yet another of its community's needs. In this case, the need for a platform developed by Mexicanos for Mexicanos to talk about the issues that matter most to Mexicanos. I want to thank Latinos Progresando for having the courage to give us, as a community, a space to come together. Latinos Progresando is at its core a labor of love. It's been able to grow so much because of so many of you, and so many of you believed in it. And if you're new to LP, there's so many ways to get involved. First, congratulations. You already took a huge step by just being here tonight, or by tuning in wherever you are. But there's no better way to support the work you care about more than direct investment. So please join me in giving a gift of any amount tonight by using this QR code. You can make a one-time or reoccurring gift. And this is where I should probably make a small confession, that I'm also on the a marathon team for Latinos Progresando, Team Latinos, and there's a truth that goes with, thank you. Ooh, thank you. I'm on Team Latinos, and I hate running. I hate working out. I detest it. And so the only reason I would do it is because of how much I believe in Latinos Progresando. And so if you would like to force me to run a marathon, please consider giving to my page and supporting Latinos Progresando. One of my favorite things about MEX Talks is learning about ways Mexicans in Chicago come to their own space. Our next speaker will have so much to say about this. Julia Ramirez was recently sworn in as the new 12th Ward Alderwoman. But before this, she was already an accomplished restorative justice practitioner, social worker, and community organizer. And it's a very, very privileged place for me to be able to welcome to the stage, as we knew each other since we were kids. So please welcome Brighton Park's very own Julia Ramirez.
Hola a todos, buenas noches. I am so happy to be here. This is a full circle moment for me. This is a mama, we made it type of moment. I was 18 years old. I was a freshman in college, and Luis and LP opened their doors and believed in somebody like me. And it really transcended my nonprofit career. So thank you so much, Luis and LP. I'm ready to get really vulnerable with you all. I'm going to share quite a bit about myself in such a short amount of time. And the first thing you should know about me is que yo soy una chillona. I cry a lot because I feel hard. I love hard. I'm an emotional Mexicana. But don't get it twisted. También yo soy una chingona. And so is my mom and my grandma, who are here tonight. Hi, Mom. Just 6 months ago, I did a thing. I walked into McKinley Park Library on 35th Street, and I voted for myself. It's crazy, right? I saw my name on the ballot, and I voted for myself to become the next alderwoman of the 12th Ward. Thank you so much. Representing the Southwest side of this great city of Chicago. I was my biggest fan. I would strap on my durable yet inexpensive boots from Target, also known as Target. I would stuff my gloves with hand warmers, and I would knock door by door. And then there were other days that I was my biggest enemy. I would always ask myself, who did I think I was to be running for such an esteemed position? So walking block by block, I would question, ¿Quién soy yo? And the truth is I'm a little bit of everything. I'm a little bit of the old, I'm a little bit of the new, I'm a little bit of the fresh, and a little bit of the vintage, because 90s babies are vintage. But I am a blend, people are laughing, I know. I'm a blend of the intersectionalities of life. I was raised by two strong women in their own right, but they both had very different and conflicting viewpoints and experiences. I am a granddaughter of a grandmother that was born and raised in La Joya, Mexico. She would sing rancheras and mariachi with her sister, and she was the last of 7 women, imagínate, in Mexico, at 24 years old, that decided to have kids and get married. And I'm a daughter of a mother that was born and raised right here in the city of Chicago. She loved listening to The Cure and Depeche Mode, and she was the first of her 5 siblings to have children. It's all very complex, and I choose to live my life in the complexities of the gray and not see life so black and white. I think that we all are all different, and we all bring something to the table. And a lot of times, a lot of the differences that we see them in our own families. Take my family, for instance. On my paternal side, my Ramirez family, my grandparents were born and raised in Bridgeport. They didn't speak Spanish, and they loved celebrating the 4th of July with hamburgers and hot dogs. My grandparents loved listening to Santana and disco music. And then on my maternal side, my Mendoza family, they migrated to Chicago in the 70s, to Pilsen, Chicago. And then they became one of the first Mexican homeowners in Brighton Park. Brighton Park, the ward that I am now alderwoman in. It's absolutely amazing. And summers were really different. Summers were actually for trips back to Mexico. My grandfather would take me down to South Chicago for really good food. And I would binge watch Cantinflas movies with my grandma. And we still quote those movies all the time. And so yo no soy de aquí ni de allá, pero un poco de los dos. And sometimes de tres y cuatro. 3 and 4 representing the variation of my Mexican identities that were cultivated in the 80s and 90s. There was a big shift, but not everybody got the same opportunities. That's why yo soy street and book smart. In my family, we all got different forms of education. I have 2 uncles that went to U of I from Kelly High School on scholarship, but I also have a father that went back to get his GED in his 30s. My brother, he went to 4 different high schools, and he still managed to graduate in 4 years. His high school graduation was one of the happiest moments of my life. And then there's me. I went to boarding school in Pebble Beach, California. And I would come back to Chicago, spend my summertime shy playing basketball at Kelly Park. And one of those uncles with that prestigious engineering degree would come up to the courts and shake up with me and play basketball with me. That's where I knew that we can be both. We can be a mix of all of those things. Excuse me. We can be a mix of all of those things. And I try to use that in my work. Yo soy an anti-violence advocate, a restorative justice practitioner, but also a victim of gun violence. Living and breathing the work, I could not stop the systematic violence that persists in the city of Chicago and in neighborhoods like mine. I lost my only brother, Nicholas Ramirez Jr., at the age of 19, just months after his high school graduation. I've lived the heartaches of this city. I've questioned whether I was just some quota to fill. I've struggled to find myself in history and in movies, but in reality, the history has been written all around us. We are vessels and carriers of the present, past, and the future. That's why I love going back to Mexico. Most times finding myself within the ruins of our ancestors, learning about the beauty and the creation, only to know the ways that we've been oppressed and colonized. But as hard as they try to erase us from history, we persist to rewrite it, and we find our mark. So on February 28th, 2023, I made my wedge in history. I won my election. And I now, thank you so much. I now sit on a city council that has the most women in its history, the most Latina members in its history, the most openly identifying LGBTQIA members in its history. I stand before you as a history maker, as a representation of all the firsts that have come before me to create an opportunity like this one. So when I think about those cold days when I would ask myself, who am I? ¿Quién soy yo? I am my community. I am from my community. I see and stand for my community. I am now a representative of a majority Latina, Mexican identifying ward. And although we have very different stories and very different needs, I make a clear choice to meet people where they are at and to fight for a more equitable society. So as the polling places closed on that Tuesday, February 28th night, I walked into my victory party to a roaring room, and the DJ was playing Follow Me. It's my favorite house song. It's mine and my brother's song. And as the Telemundo cameras kept watching us and kept recording us, we all ended up grabbing hands and we were running across the room doing La Víbora dance. So it's my commitment to myself, my commitment to my community in this city, to keep showing up and being a representation of all that is me, la chillona, chingona mexicana. Yo soy Julia Monique Ramirez. I am the alderwoman, and we deserve it all. Gracias.
One more time for Julia, everybody. Before I bring our final speaker, I want to take a moment to thank once again our title sponsor, Target. I want to thank our presenting sponsor, Bimbo Bakeries USA and Constellation Brands, as well as the National Museum of Mexican Art, Blue Door, Neighborhood Center, ABC 7 Chicago, Valdez and Vilim, Sinai Chicago, Wintrust Bank, and all of our 2023 sponsors. Thank you. Thank you. And now, Latinos Progresando is proud to welcome Whew. I really am looking forward to one day hosting a morning news talk show with you, Emma. Fingers crossed. And now let's hear it again for Sones de México.
¡Échale, Morena!
Cuando la luna sale bien de mi vida y el sol se esconde, se prende un farolito y sale la gente no sé de dónde. Cuando la luna sale y el sol se esconde, se prende un farolito y sale la gente no sé de dónde. No sé de dónde, no sé de dónde, un son jarocho. Y es que esta misma noche se hará un fandango aquí en la 18. Saca tu butaquito bien de mi vida, mano, te sientes que llegaron los sones, no me digas, no me cuentes. Saca tu butaquito, tu butacazo, te quise ver sentada toda la noche junto al fandango. Eso fue. Sean todos bienvenidos, damas señores, que aquí es su casa. Avísele a don Carlos para que se traiga toda la raza. Sean todos bienvenidos, que aquí es su casa. Avísele a don Carlos para que se traiga toda la raza. Toda la raza, vengan toditos. Y es que esta misma noche será un fandango aquí en la 18. Saca tu butaquito, tu butacazo. Que si tú tienes miedo, china del alma, yo estoy temblando. Saca tu butaquito, tu butacón. Y quiero ver sentada toda la noche junto al balcón. Échale, esas tripas, hombre. Si alguna duda tienes de mi pasión, toma un cuchillo y abre, cielito lindo, mi corazón. Si alguna duda tienes de mi pasión, toma un cuchillo y abre, cielito lindo, mi corazón, mi corazón, mi corazón. Pero con tiento, cuidado no te lastimes, cielito lindo, que vas tú dentro. Saca tu butaquito, siéntate aquí, siéntate allá, que te quiero ver sentada con tu papito, con tu mamá. Saca tu butaquito, tu butacazo, ahora que estamos solos, bien de mi vida, dame un abrazo. ¡Opa! Así.
One more time for Sonas, everybody. Woo. Woo. What a beautiful way to close out our program tonight. Before we officially end, we have many thanks to give for making our 11th annual MEX Talks possible. Thank you to our title sponsor, Target, and presenting sponsors, Bimbo Bakeries USA and Constellation Brands. And all of our 2023 MEX Talks sponsors, thank you for making this possible. The warmest thank you of all to our incomparable Sandra Marquez, who helped prepare all of tonight's speakers, to Dea Friedman, tonight's stage manager, and to the Harris Theater team, front and back of house. Let's give them all a round of applause. Any members of Latinos Progresando staff, board of directors, and MEX Talks Familia, please stand up. Everybody, let's stand up if we're a part of one of those three groups. LP staff, board of directors, MEX Talks family. Let's give these folks a round of applause. Thank you. We want to thank them because they are the most dedicated and visionary people working in this city. Thank you for all that you do. And thank you all for joining us and for supporting this incredible work. That concludes our amazing program tonight. If you have a wristband, you will be heading to the second level lobby. If you do not, please stick around to check out our photo opportunities on the 5th level, which is the ground level. Once again, it has been a privilege being with you this evening. It is truly, truly a privilege. And I say to you now, good night y viva Mexico. Thank you.